Steph Curry says he'd have a tough time playing on a bottom feeder, and the talking heads are loving it. Everyone's like, Curry's leaving. This is the end. Let's let Locked On Warriors give you some rational thoughts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen of every day. We are free and available wherever you get your audio podcasts. We're streaming on YouTube, and if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I'm Charlie Walter. I covered the Warriors for CBS Bay Area and 95.7 The Game. Kylen Mills has done the same at KRON 4 and NBC Sports Bay Area. And we team up today to decipher what Steph Curry is saying by not committing to being a Warrior for life. What does that mean? Draymond Green says the Warriors could have made a trade that would have significantly improved their team, huh? And he turned it down? Why? Plus, Steve Kerr is a buzzword that makes people go wild. I love when the comments are flowing all over the place and everyone's going crazy. So we're going to get the people going. Kylen and I give our biggest gripes on Coach Kerr. Kylen, how are you? Good to see you. Your initial thoughts on Steph Curry's news saying he needs a competitive team or the situation could change?
Chuck, great to see you. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. I am back. Like I said, I'm still very much a part of the show. So glad to be here. If you're watching on YouTube, I've got my specs on, a little four eyes look going. My allergies, I know I've been saying this like every show. My allergies have been crazy. My doctor told me to take some time off the contacts, use the eye drops. If anyone has any tips, drop them in the comments because allergy season right now, like heading into August, is the worst time for me every year. So I need some advice because I don't want to go through with getting allergy shots. But on the side of the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry's comments, very interesting in an exclusive article to speaking to Mark Spears with Anscape, saying that he would have a tough time being on a bottom feeder. And he was asked about, look at a Kobe Bryant situation, look at a Dirk Nowitzki situation. Would you be okay with closing out your career and riding off into the sunset on a team that's not just out of championship contention, but a bottom feeding team? And he said, I would have a really hard time doing that. He said, I don't think that's going to be the reality, but I don't know that I could do it. I think that does add some pressure to the Golden State Warriors that they do have to produce competitive teams for the duration of Steph Curry's career and while he continues to be a Warrior. It's something I think this front office already wanted to do, was try to avoid a total rebuild, but it's easier said than done. They're in a situation now where it's that tough question of, do you try to trade away some of the youth for win now pieces? Or do you let the youth develop regardless of how that might impact the box score, the record, the playoff contention situation? It's a tough position to be in. Teams typically go through a rebuild after winning 4 NBA championships. Let's keep that in mind. Let's keep some perspective, folks. Typically, there is a lengthy downtime after that. The Warriors are trying to avoid it, but that's not something that is often done where you're developing youth and also contending for titles. It's just not done in the NBA. So how do you do it? I don't know.
National media is spinning this like Steph Curry's sending subliminal messages. I did my best to say that word. Basically saying, no, I was watching the shows today. Subliminal. They're saying that he's basically like, we need to go all in for Lauri Markkanen, or I'm potentially bracing Warriors fans for the future. Like, this is possible. If you don't give me the pieces to contend, then, you know, I may not stay here forever. It's a possibility I stay here forever. He did use that word. It's a possibility I stay here forever, but I just can't see myself in a situation where I'm on a bottom feeding team. But where I found it interesting is just reading this backwards, the quote that he had, because the first line that he says, if you read it backwards, is, I don't think this is going to be reality. If it's a situation where you're a bottom feeder, I'd have a tough time, but I've always said I want to be a Warrior for life. At this stage in my career, I feel like that is possible. So to me, he's basically saying, I still feel like it's possible that we have a good team that contends this season, that is nowhere near close to a bottom feeder. But like everyone else, I don't think Steph even knows what to expect. And we got to get into the Draymond Green news in just a little bit because he kind of had something that comes into this equation as well. But just your thoughts on that last line. I don't think it's going to be a possibility. Is that just something that he has to say, being a company man, or are you in 1,000% agreement that he believes it?
The Warriors are going to do everything possible to make sure that's not the case. Owner Joe Lacob is one of the most competitive and meticulous owners in sports out there. And I truly believe that. Him buying this team is what really turned around this Golden State Warriors organization. He demands excellence. He has been that person at the top, and it's a trickle down effect in creating the championship culture. And say what you will about Joe Lacob wanting him to spend more money. He spent the money, folks. He's done what it took to build a championship team 4 times, and he deserves some credit for that. Joe Lacob does not like to lose. There is absolutely no way that he is going to be okay with having a bottom feeder team repeatedly as this organization tries to rebuild. So I don't think it's going to be a reality either from everything that I know about Joe Lacob, from being around Joe Lacob, from covering the team, from conversations that he's had, from how he's spoken to the media. I don't think that's something that he is ever going to accept. And that's a big reason why the Warriors in the last couple of years have drafted players who they've held on to and said they're committed to developing, like a Jonathan Kuminga, who they're refusing to put in trade discussions. Brandon,
Yeah, they could have Paul George if they would have put him in there.
right, exactly. They could have made the move for a win now piece, but the reason why they're not is because this organization is also committed to setting themselves up for the future. That puts them, though, in the tough position of they may not be championship contenders right now. And that's something that Steph actually acknowledged in that article. And in his quote, he said, "You can still be competitive. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed a championship." And to me, that's Steph Curry acknowledging that this could be a good team this next year. This could be a really good team. It may not be a championship contending team. I think we expect those young players to develop in Trace Jackson Davis, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Pajemski. Are those 4 young guys developing going to be enough to make this a contending team? No. Are the veterans they added to the roster in the offseason, Buddy Hield, Slow-Mo, are they enough to make this a championship contending team? Also, no. The Warriors are still missing that big signing. If it doesn't happen, I think they're going to be competitive, but I think that a title is going to be out of reach. Is Steph Curry okay with that? To me, it sounds like it. It sounds like Curry's like, okay, if we're competitive, we're in the mix. That's enough to keep me happy because Steph Curry is also someone, as any top competitor is, who doesn't like to lose. Kobe was the same way, but he was
Yeah.
willing to accept it because he loved the Lakers organization and that was his dream. To me, it sounds like Steph Curry doesn't love the Warriors more than he hates losing. That's the bottom line. And so I think if this organization can continue to create competitive rosters, even if they're not championship rosters, Steph Curry is going to be a Warrior for life. I don't want to take this quote too far, as some of the national media are, and saying, "Oh, Curry's out the door. Oh, it's subliminal messaging. Oh, it's this, that, and the other."
The beginning of the
I,
end.
I'm not. I'm not buying into that. I'm not going to buy all the way into that, but I do think there is a little bit of pressure on the front office to figure things out. But I like the young talent that the Warriors have in this roster right now. I do believe that they will develop. I would love to see Steve Kerr try to do a better job of developing them and giving them a longer leash, as I've said through the last couple of years, to really blossom. I think if that happens, Steve Kerr tweaks some of his rotations, tweaks his treatment of some of the young players. I do think there's room for improvement there in allowing those young guys to grow. But I do think there's still a lot of promise in this Warriors team. And I think even with that young core, those 4 players that I just talked about, now you add in a Quentin Post, you've got a big man, hopefully, who can develop in addition to Trace Jackson Davis. So I think Trace Jackson Davis is more of a 5, and I kind of teeter because he could play the 4. But regardless, so you've got some different types of players in the mix right now. You have some young talent that you like. Brandon Pajemski, to me, is pointing to the ability to be a point guard. You've got a Moses Moody who can play the 2 or 3. You've got Jonathan Kuminga who's a 3 or 4. Like, you've got different young guys that bring different elements to this roster that if you just keep all of those players, I think you avoid a total disastrous rebuild. And that's the hope, right?
Yeah, but it's not disastrous rebuild. I don't think if it's an ultra competitive team, like I think Steph would seriously. I know that you're alluding to, if the team sneaks into the playoffs, if they compete, whatever it may be, what's considered a good season. No, I think like he absolutely wants a winner. You hear behind the scenes all the time, Steph Curry is one of the most competitive people in the game. This is him
He
not,
is a great
not
player.
bracing, not bracing
you know?
the fan base because he's saying, I don't think it's going to happen. But, putting it out there that like, hey, we need to start winning now. And why this is so important is because Draymond Green in the last 48 hours on Jeff Teague's podcast has said that the Warriors had a chance to win now. And Draymond Green stepped in and said, let's not do it. Be smart here. We're talking about that coming up. Locked on Warriors is brought to you by Gametime. I love going to MLB games during the summer. Oracle Park, you got to get your coat, even if it's a 1 p.m. game, because it heats up quickly and you got plenty of cash on you, because that crab out in center field that I love so much is about $25 for a
Parmesan garlic fries. 2 words. That's all you need to know.
Ride those electric bikes down there. You know, you got to ride through the Embarcadero on those electric bikes. But Gametime is the best app to attend MLB games with. Why should you use Gametime? How about the prices go down the closer you get to first pitch? So if you're late for the game, you get there in the first inning, you open up the Gametime app. I hope you didn't buy tickets beforehand, because you're getting tickets over half off. How about that? And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Kylen. So Draymond Green says that the team could be a lot better as of July 25th had they made a trade that they were at least entertaining. Draymond Green on Jeff Teague's podcast said, not verbatim, but essentially, hey, we had a chance to make, and he didn't just say trade, to make trades in the last week that I said would have made our team a whole lot better, would have helped me and Steph in this current moment. But I've always kept it real with this organization and cared about the future, and I'm going to keep it real with them now. This may actually be word for word. And then he said from there, I told them that's an awful decision. That would not make our team better in the future. Your thoughts to Draymond Green saying this? Could he have potentially been alluding to that Lowry Markkanen trade that involved the 3 first-round picks and Brandon Bajemski, or maybe even the trade beforehand that involved Kuminga and Bajemski?
That's the only logical explanation for what Draymond Green is referring to, because everything surrounding the Warriors in terms of trade discussions has surrounded the Warriors pursuing Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. I think that's got to be the situation he's talking about. So we'll speak about it, assuming that he's referencing that, but there's no way to know 100%. And what exactly did Draymond Green block? That's my big question mark, because I think Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Bajemski, and picks is too much. It's too much mortgaging of the future to bring in a player who you hope will help you win now, but there's still no 100% guarantee that Lauri Markkanen fits in with the system, has another year, replicates the season he did last year in his first time as an NBA All-Star. There's no guarantee he stays healthy. So there's no guarantees in these situations when you bring in a player who you hope could help you contend this season, that things will play out that way. I think that if you're talking Brandon Bajemski and picks, then my eyes get a little bit bigger and I feel a little bit more comfortable making that trade. I know we've talked about it. We've debated it here on the show. To me, I'm more willing to move a Brandon Bajemski than I am a Jonathan Kuminga. I do think Kuminga's generational athleticism is hard to replicate. Brandon Bajemski, I love, great player. I do think he's a very special skill set, and he adapted to the NBA much quicker than I thought he would. He deserves a lot of credit. But I would be willing to move a Brandon Bajemski and picks for a Lauri Markkanen. If Draymond Green, in fact, blocked that trade, then I'm scratching my head a little bit. The other question you have to ask is, how much are Draymond Green and Steph Curry and this front office, how much is everyone on the same page about going all in to win now versus trying to prepare and develop for the future? Because based on Steph Curry's comments we just discussed, it sounds like Steph Curry wants to win now. Draymond Green in his comments made it clear that he's going to be looking out for the Warriors' organizational interest long-term, even if that means beyond his playing years. So those two things to me are not adding up. They're at a juxtaposition here. Who's right? Who's wrong? What direction are the Warriors going to go? That remains to be seen. Obviously, the Markkanen trade has not yet come to fruition. According to reports out in the last 24 hours, the Warriors are in the driver's seat to make that happen. Are they going to make it happen? Are they going to make this a possibly contending team this year? Or are they going to settle for being a competitive team and letting the youth develop? That's the crossroads that they're at right now. But I think it's, I don't want to say concerning, maybe concerning, just that Draymond Green, it sounds like, is on a different page than Steph Curry about being determined to win now.
Here's my take from all of this is that you're 1,000% on the camp of Lowry Markkinen. I mean, when you were watching Bulls games a couple of years ago, you weren't Lowry Markkinen, but I get it. He's
Yes,
older. He's not hurt.
I still think he was really good and promising on the Bulls, but guess what? It's been a trash organization surrounded by trash teammates, trash culture. And so that's a tough situation for a player to thrive. But go ahead.
I was just saying finances play so much more into this than people are giving credit for. Like Joe Lacob spent an entire offseason, essentially the entire last year. I mean, look at the last 14 months dating back to flipping Jordan Poole for Chris Paul so they could get out of that contract early. That's a financial decision. Financial decisions to start shopping Wiggins around, which I've heard they've tried to do this offseason. Obviously, there's been no suitors yet, which is why Andrew Wiggins is still on the Warriors, at least suitors that aren't, Zach LaVine and the Chicago Bulls coming back in return. They said, we'll take our chances with Wiggins. We don't dislike Wiggins that much. Everyone's trying to dump LaVine. No one wants him, which is unfortunate. We're just trashing the Bulls right now. It's unfair.
Yeah, when did this become a Bulls roast?
It's a financial situation to not make that trade if it were the Brandon Bajemski as compared to you're 1,000% in the camp of no, you're keeping Kuminga over Bajemski. I say keep them both. But Bajemski doesn't require a payday for a long time. He's on his rookie contract. Kuminga wants that money next season and a whole lot of it to where the universe is Andrew Wiggins is blocking this trade essentially. Because as long as you have Andrew Wiggins' contract on your team, you can't make those three things happen unless you get over the apron. And Joe Lacob's already said he doesn't want to take on those penalties. He doesn't want to take on some of the things that come with being over the luxury tax. So he's going to be under. That was his play this offseason, unless now he sees Boston going out there way above the apron and saying, screw it, it doesn't matter at all. And, him being just a kid from Boston, maybe he wants to one-up him there, and that's something that's in play. But I'm looking at finances. Podziemski costs nothing. I think he's great. I watched his tape the other night, Kylen, for like 25 minutes, best of. And I know it's his best plays. You don't see all the bad. But he just has this vision on defense where he's 2 steps ahead of the offensive player at all times. And I'm not saying he's a great on-ball defender or an on-ball defender at all points of the season last year. But what he is someone that has incredible anticipation and just an IQ that you can't teach. Great post moves for someone his side, gets up there and rebounds, plays a lot bigger than his size. So the people out there that are saying he can't be a superstar because he's too small, doesn't play like he's small, Kylen. Does not play like he's small at all. I like him. Don't get rid of him. 3 picks attached to it. No way, Jose. I think Draymond is on Team Chuck here. And I don't know what team Steph Curry is on. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't think people do until typically it's all festered up to the surface and everyone knows at once. Like when you see a video of a punch or whatever. But yeah, that's my takeaway from all of this. Go ahead with your response to those 9 things and that double.
Yeah, you touched on a lot. I also want to acknowledge that Draymond Green could have been talking about the Paul George trade. That's also one that reportedly ended up not going through because the Warriors were unwilling to trade Jonathan Kuminga to the Clippers to bring in Paul George. So maybe that's the case in terms of Draymond Green, what kind of trade he was blocking or he told the Warriors not to do, and how much influence does Draymond Green have in the organization? How much they listen to him? I mean, definitely this is an organization that cares about what him and Steph say.
I don't know. I feel like you kind of trust people to do their own jobs, and Draymond Green and Steph Curry's job is to play with the players that are surrounding them.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that it's also the organization's job to improve the roster to make this a contending team. Well, you have one of the greatest players of all time on your roster in Steph Curry, and then Draymond Green.
But how much better would they be? That's what I'm saying. If you flip
eyes.
Podziemski in 3-round picks, I mean, I think it's slanderous to the player that Podziemski's going to be. And I know half the country out there is laughing at me right now saying, Chuck, Podziemski is nothing special. He's good. He's good. He's young. He's going to get better. And you'd be attaching 3 first-round picks to him, and you'd be messing up the financial situation. I think the smartest way to look at it, from my headspace at least, is to protect your financial future, to just keep him. And then if you can work out a trade with Lowry down the road that doesn't necessarily involve him and is completely differently structured because the Jazz feel a need to get rid of him and they don't have as much leverage, then you go for it.
What happened to the notion of trading Andrew Wiggins for picks that you could send the Utah Jazz? You talked about Andrew Wiggins' salary possibly also preventing some trades from happening. Like, what about that? How can we offload Andrew Wiggins? That's something that I'm still on board with. When you talk about not wanting to mortgage the future and give away all of our picks, like get Andrew Wiggins' contract off the books and bring in some picks. That there were some rumors and reports out that they were shopping him around.
His stock's too low. You can't sell a player at his lowest point, right?
Yeah, that the Warriors were exploring that. That there might have been a very small market for it, because that's the issue. You're absolutely right, is that there aren't a lot of teams that are in the market for an Andrew Wiggins. It would have to be, as we've talked about on the show as well, it would have to be a contending team that's specifically looking for like a really good defensive wing, because his offensive numbers certainly are down, but they would need to be looking for someone specifically that fits his skill set, where maybe you're willing to give up some of the future to hopefully find the missing piece and the specific skill set you're looking for on a team that's already a contender. No one else is going to be wanting Andrew Wiggins. And I do hear what you're saying in terms of not wanting to trade someone away when the stock is at their lowest. Like, I do get it. But at the same time, keeping Andrew Wiggins, what's the gain? You hope that he comes back and gets back to the 2022 level. So if he doesn't, you've got the big contract on the books. Let's just say it's more inconsistency like we saw last season. Like, where does Andrew Wiggins really fit in the picture?
Yeah.
I thought last year he should have been moved sooner to the bench and out of the starting lineup because of how he played. He looked disinterested. I don't think that his defense was at the level that it was, or he's the best defender on the floor. He didn't have the aggression. He couldn't hit shots. I mean, it was just a wholesale change from the player in 2022. Flashes of that 2022 player were there, but not consistently. And you need a player that you can rely on. So if you do keep Wiggins, though, it's like on that side, what's to gain?
If this was 5 years ago and the financial situation was completely different back then than it is now, and Lacob was just throwing the pocketbook, I mean, it's absolutely, you can trade Podziemski, you can get Lowry in there, and you could probably deal with 2 first-round picks. You could have 2, not 3. I do think Podziemski is going to be a really good player. Don't get me wrong, but Lowry's better. Lowry's a more coveted position. Lowry has a more coveted skill set. Like, Lowry, this second is better than Brandon. Now, I do think Brandon has a lot more room for growth considering his age compared to Lowry's. Lowry's already had his, peak probably. He's in his prime, whereas Brandon's going into it. But unfortunately, you can't do that anymore. You can't just sign whoever you want. Financials play a big piece into all of this. And he just got himself out of tax jail, as we call it, did Joe Lacob. Why would he want to get himself back into it? And that's what you'd be doing by flipping Podziemski in that deal for Lowry and then trying to sign Jonathan Kuminga as well. That's my take. We're giving our takes on Steve Kerr coming up. He's a buzzword right now that makes Warriors fans, most at least, go wild. All right, Kylen. So Steve Kerr, my biggest gripe. It's a gripe that many Warriors fans have with Coach Kerr right now, and it's his rotations. Starting back to, it's been goofy for a few years now, but really noticed it when Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome were getting significant playing time as two-way players over a young Moses Moody, who, mind you, received significant playing time in the Dallas Mavericks series, was a top 15 draft pick, and seemed like that would be a perfect time to give him reps because, like anything in life, I remember, Kylen, my first time broadcasting, and I was looking at the wrong camera. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I was leaning all over the place like a buoy. Nothing I said made sense. I don't remember any of it. It was like a blackout because I had no reps. And I would imagine that's what a rookie is like in the NBA when he makes his transition from collegiate basketball to the NBA, and he holds his own in his rookie year, shows promise in his second year and just is getting DNPs, and Ty Jerome and Lamb are getting more playing time than Anthony. It doesn't make any sense. And then when you see that they had the opportunity to sign those two-way players for the playoffs and didn't bring them in, they let the contracts expire, if I remember correctly. That big time head scratcher for me. Then Corey Joseph getting the playing time last year. It stems to me because Podziemski played plenty. Jackson Davis started playing more as the season went along. Kuminga, at least last year, started getting some run. It really stems to me with Moses Moody, because he's someone that you could have grown his stock for the last few years if he wasn't a part of the future. You could have seen what you had with Moses Moody, a yes or a no. And right now I feel like it's just kind of in limbo. Like, I don't know what to think of Moody. Like, I think he's a solid basketball player. Can he be great? I don't know. He hasn't got enough run. That's my biggest gripe.
I'm on the same page as you about this, Chuck. My biggest gripe, I mean, I think the rotations are a problem. It goes beyond the young players, though. Just like the mixing and matching that Steve Kerr has done with the individuals in the lineup. Like, I don't like multiple times throughout games where it's like, why is this person in the fourth quarter? I think that, for example, I don't love Steph and Brandon Podziemski playing together, like for extended run. There have been a lot of things, too much small ball. There have been a lot of different situations rotationally that I just have scratched my head. My bigger issue is just the handling overall of the development of the Warriors' young players. And that does also correlate to rotations. And it's like what you're just touching on. Jonathan Kuminga got more extended minutes this past season, but it still, to me, didn't consistently reflect how he's playing. So, for example, you look at that Denver Nuggets game. It's one that I've brought up multiple times where reports came out after the fact that Jonathan Kuminga told media members he's frustrated and had lost confidence in Steve Kerr because Kuminga scores 17 or 18 points through the first three quarters and then is benched for the fourth quarter. Why? Like, the Warriors are trying to come back. Put in the hot hit. Like, what? That doesn't make sense. There were similar times where the same thing happened with Moses Moody. And he came into the game, hit a couple. What game was that? There was a game where he came in and hit a bunch of threes, and then all of a sudden just gets yanked and doesn't play the rest
players,
of the game.
And it's the players that you're putting in instead of them. Like, there had to be a point of the season where they knew that Klay Thompson was not the future, and they know that Corey Joseph is not the future, and they know that Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb are not the future, and maybe Moses Moody isn't the future. He wasn't the present either. But you spent all that draft capital on him. I just feel like, shouldn't you find out?
Lottery picks, when you're talking about lottery picks, you expect the organization to be committed to developing them, or at least to see some kind of potential and future in them. That's why you bring those players in, unless you have an immediate plan to bring them in and trade them.
Or unless the Ty Jerome and the Anthony Lambs are significantly better and give you a significantly better chance of winning. And I mean, maybe they gave you a little better chance of winning. I don't know. But the minutes, they were just skewed. They didn't add up to me. But how can Steve Kerr even screw up the rotations this year? I feel like it's pretty set up for, I guess, in terms of my biggest gripe, not playing Moses Moody enough to see what he's made of. He can easily screw that one up because he's third on the depth chart right now. If you're talking Buddy Hield as the backup shooting guard, Podziemski starting at the shooting guard. And then if you're looking at, maybe he's the backup three, but if Kuminga is going to play the three, you got Kuminga and Wiggins there. You got Kyle Anderson, Draymond potentially at the four.
Oh, Chuck, he can still find ways to screw up the rotations. That's all I'm going to say on that. We'll have to see.
Who's going to be the player that halfway through the season, the Warriors are, is it going to be like Lindy Waters that's getting 17 minutes of and everyone's like, what is Lindy Waters doing getting minutes over Moses Moody?
There will never be another mystery like the Ty Jerome, Anthony Lamb obsession. And actually, Ty Jerome made a little more sense because, they felt like he was what they needed in a third string or second string point guard. And then there were times where Steph wasn't playing. But like the Anthony Lamb obsession, I will never understand. And I will never
played well. I personally, I'll die on a hill.
We got to wrap.
I'll die on a hill if he played all right. Don't get me wrong, but not good enough to where when people need reps in any industry that you're in, I don't care what you're doing for your career or whether it's school, reps are everything from the days of reading a book to riding a bike with the training wheels until you could take them off and ride the bike like a big boy. Reps are everything in anything. And because of that, it makes no sense not to give your young players reps unless the players that were playing above them gave you a significantly better chance of winning. And I just don't think that's the take or the case.
Or if the team is literally championship contenders and atop the conference. Like, that's the other thing. The Warriors, the last 2 seasons, like, they're below 500. So the team at that time is not doing well. It's not like, hey, we don't want to fix something that's not broken by moving different pieces into the rotation.
You're right.
It's like, you're already struggling. So why not give the young
Mix it
players
up.
opportunities? That's the other piece of this, is contextually
give it a mix.
where the team is at in the standings and in the season. And the Warriors have not performed well in the season. So why not?
All right, Locked On Warriors. This is your daily Warriors podcast. Thank you for making it a part of your day. Kylen Mills, Charlie Walter with you. Peace, everyone.